our session today. We're going to have a session with Marc, and we're going to talk about the internationalization strategy in terms of GTM. It's a lot of aspects here in terms of where we're going to go, if we're going to go. Timing, it's a very important aspect of internationalization as well. So as usual, we're going to go a quick round and see where we are with all the startups. But before that, we just have a few announcements here. I'm here in Sweden in our headquarters, and Stefan Skoglund is out traveling. I think you're in Stockholm. Is that correct, Stefan?
Yeah, it's correct. I'm in Stockholm right now. So, yeah. Do you want me to do something?
No, that's fine. I heard that you mentioned a few things about the MDR one-to-ones. Do you want to announce that?
Yeah, great. So sure. We have three housekeeping things that's coming up. And for now, on Friday, I hope you've seen that we have a meet how to speak to investors session on Friday morning, 1 hour again, talking about how to speak to investors. And in the afternoon, you have the opportunity to pitch for the innovation board of DigitalWell Arena Initiative. So there will be people from the university, from Karlstad municipality, and the region of Värmland, working in the public sector here, and some other people. So it's not like a pitching that you will sell stuff, but they are curious about what to actually do, what kind of problems to solve and your solutions, and they want to help you, give you feedback and links into the public sector in this ecosystem. So that's the purpose of that session. So it's a friendly session and not aggressive in that way. And it's more like just tell them what you do and you get some feedback and actions based on that. So that's the purpose. So you don't need to pitch like. And on Monday and Tuesday next week, we have a thing called Meet the Ecosystem in the Nordics and the ecosystem in the Baltics, and we invited guests from all these 8 countries basically to tell a little bit about how the ecosystem works in these countries, and you will have at least one connection to that country or one way in based on that, and you have an opportunity to ask questions if you're curious about something special about just that ecosystem. So that's 2 launch sessions that we have on Monday and Tuesday. And if you don't have the opportunity to participate, we will also record the sessions, of course. But that's also a networking opportunity. So you have. And lastly, next Wednesday, we will go into what's called the regulatory conditions for startups. So we will talk about the Medical Device Regulations Act, information security, and so on. So we'll have 2 experts, really good experts based on this field, talking about this. We will start with MDR and we will continue with the information security part like GDPR and everything like that. Because that's questions that we will get from investors as well. How do you handle MDR? How do you handle GDPR? How do you handle all these things of regulatory conditions? And based on that, you will also have the opportunity to book individual coaching sessions, just like we've done with Marc and the other experts here with these consultants. If you want to, that's up to you. We will pay for 1 hour specialized advice with them if you want to, and that's up to you. So I think that was the housekeeping stuff for the next week.
All right.
Yeah, great.
Thanks, Stefan. Thank you. And also touching back on the demo day that we discussed last Wednesday, we received a response from almost all of you. I put the confirmed companies down in the chat field here now. So you will see which companies said yes and which ones we're waiting for. So Coach Nation and My Nana Care, please let us know if you intend to join us or not on the 6th. If not, what we're probably going to do is to invite a couple of our alumni as well in your place. So it's important that you answer. All right, thank you very much for that. We'll move on to the little round here. And I think I'll start with you, Roland, because you're right in the middle of my screen here. I see you're on the train or something like that. So,
yeah, exactly.
So what's your perspective on internationalization and timing? Have you started thinking about it? Do you plan for it? When are you going to do it, if you're going to do it? Any plans about that and thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we approach the development of our company very much with an international mindset. So, for example, we started out with working with a lab in Portland, Oregon. We have a supplier of CE marked cards that's from the US, and we have really built the company as a nutritional recommendation company from a regulatory perspective, so that we comply with EU and FDA regulatory framework. So we could start on that basis, and we have basically freedom to operate. Eventually, we want to register our technology as a diagnostic tool, but that's a parallel process. So very much an international mindset from the beginning.
Thank you very much, Roland. I can see Niklas here as well from Repeak. You want to share with us your thoughts on the subject?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have thought about it and have a first plan for it, but we need more insight later on. And this session, I think, will be a good step towards that, and also discussing with Marc afterwards to see what's reasonable and that sort of thing. So looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you very much. I can see that Baynex, you're with us, both Enis and SARP. I don't know which one of you wants to talk right now. Should we try SARP perhaps?
Hello, guys.
Hi, guys.
Usually Enis takes the stage at such moments. So, Enis, please, will you?
Enis is
Okay,
still...
okay, probably he's not. Yeah, I was checking something, so I missed the question. Can you please repeat? Sorry for that.
Basically, your reflections on internationalization. I know that you already started to branch out and organize yourselves in Estonia and Italy, customer based in Turkey. So please share with us your thoughts.
So thank you for this. So it's very distributed, as you said. We have some companies all around the world, Europe, but our target customers are mainly in US and Canada. I would say maybe you can add UK. The reason for that is first the abilities of the product, since we have our own AI algorithm in it, and everything is built in English. So English speaking language is currently an important aspect for our product. So one of them is of course that. We have also high conversion rates in US, so initial traction seems to be fine. So first we will try mainly US. I can say mainly we will focus on US. This also will result in, this will give me some leverage for getting funding from US, because that's the main thing they look for, US traction and US based company. So maybe we will open another company in US, like the fourth one. We'll see how it works. In 2-3 months, our strategy will be, how can I say, more validated. We'll see how it works in US.
Interesting. Things like you actually made a lot of thoughts around the subject. Great. Let's move on to Data Terra. You with us?
Yes. We have mainly focused in Nordic region since we are based here, and my idea is to have one representative from each Nordic countries in my advisory board, which is very helpful. And the secondary market is UK, and that is what I am exploring, the opportunities there. But as a team, we are already international. But as a concept, we have some thoughts, but we haven't invested a lot of time on that. But we have in mind, of course.
Great. Thank you very much. I can see that Felicia is with us as well from Mode Social in Stockholm. Hi, Felicia.
Hi. So for us, as we are still in the starting phase. We're not talking about going international so much just yet, but one step that we have been looking into would be to reach out in Australia. I used to live there and did my bachelor's, so I have a lot of connection and also did it within my. Also got my degree within for us. So that would be our next step. It would also be a great way to look when we look for investors to say like, oh, we got to reach all the way to the other side of the globe. But mainly for now, we're focusing on Sweden.
Okay. Thank you very much for sharing. I think that's the startups that are here today. If I missed anyone, please shout out. If not, I think I will hand over to our eminent coach today, Mr. Marc Wullings. Welcome, Marc.
Say much. Say much.
I think you're on mute.
What a shame.
There we go.
I was just saying that this was probably the best introduction I've had for a long time. And I was just wondering if you have a DJ background or something like that, because it's close to the Jimmy Kimmel annotation. So I like that. That's pretty good.
It's only the BPM that was missing here now. All right.
We'll work on that.
More aligned.
We'll work on that next time when we see you. So welcome, guys. Internationalization. I can well imagine, and actually it also shows in the interest because there's not so many startups around here today, that this is quite far from today's reality. And yet we still think it's important that you discuss this at the moment already. And the reason is that it's actually better to do this from the start, to be kind of born global, than to do it later and then have to reproductize your stuff. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that if you want to look good for investors, and you always do, you have a market share hockey stick slide that probably already touches on internationalization and a global market. And the reason we have that is because we all typically come from the smaller European countries. So we're almost forced to go abroad. Otherwise, we wouldn't be competitive to other markets. I know from Roland that he's on his way on the train and will have to drop the call in half an hour. So what I'll do is I'll explain a bit on what we do prior to opening the deck. So that's I think is important. Today is going to be a pretty difficult session in the sense that we are doing quite a lot of work, and we'll be doing it halfway. So around 9:50, in half an hour or so from now, we'll get started on a pretty big exercise. And if it all goes well, I'm not sure, Dasha, I guess, has left the call already, but you must have received a workbench. And if you haven't, no harm, because Stefan got the same email, so he can share it. So that's been taken care of.
I'll do that now in the chat.
Yeah. So that's where we are from that perspective. Let's get started. And some household comments. You still have the opportunity to book a one-on-one for this session, and I would like to, for those who haven't already had 3 sessions with me, to also give you guys the opportunity to book next week. So next week you can just open up my Calendly and book a meeting if you want to. And then we close off the project from my side because you guys need to move on another subject. But that's at least a piece of householding from my side. Now, with that, any questions so far? I guess it's okay. I'll be explaining stuff along the way. So let me share. You'll be seeing my screen now. Yes, that works nicely. And I can see you guys still because I have my phone open so that I can see you. So let's discuss internationalization strategy. And what we'll do today is we'll work a little bit around the context. So where are we today? What kind of concepts do you need to think about? Then we'll talk a lot about a workbench that Stefan is going to share you, where we actually look in a little bit more deeper way on which markets to pick, which goals to do, and so on. And then from there, we'll work about practicalities. And I have to say, most of the stuff we discussed today is generic. Some of the stuff it's a little bit more B2B focused in the end, but I'll explain how you will do that for B2C if you just raise your hand. So this is how it's been set up. Obviously, afterwards, you know that you can book a one-on-one call. And I wanted to start off with one particular question, and that is, when would you call internationalization a success? So what would, in your opinion, be a good and solid internationalization? So when would you be happy if you enter another country? Who would like to give that a shot? And I prefer, actually, I'm going to do this the other way around because you are behaving very Swedish today, so I have to kind of give people turns. So I prefer to ask Niklas this because he is still on the very front end of internationalization. So Niklas, what would be your definition of success?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you can think about the market share in the country, what percentage you want to have. That's one thing that pops into mind to think about. But otherwise, it's more about getting traction in that country. And what is traction and how much, that's another question. But that are my initial thoughts about it.
Yeah, no, it's fair. Anyone wants to add before we move on? Different opinions, different thoughts? Not much? Okay, I'll explain what I find important when you do internationalization. And that is that you kind of go full orbit. And what that means is that when you would launch a rocket, you need to get out of the gravity of your home country. So in other words, you want this international effort to kind of become self-funding and contributing to the growth of your company, not the other way around, which you see quite often happen, that it's actually bringing you down. And so that's why internationalization is pretty important, because that you do it well, because you're kind of betting the bank on typically a larger market that you are already active in. So that kind of makes that it has to be done right. Now, of course, there's research done on why internationalization fails for startup. So let's go through the key points that came out. The wrong reasons is a very important one. So I've seen companies want to go international because they can't get a good fit on their home market. And while, of course, it's logical that you don't want to expand your horizon, you also could read it the same way as you haven't really received market fit in your home market that you know best. So what is there, let's say, out there that would have a better market fit? It's quite a risky expansion. Another one is false market fit assumption. I'll come back to that in a minute. We'll talk about the concept of local market fit, because market fit is, as you've probably already learned from others, a dynamic concept. So market fit today doesn't mean market fit tomorrow. The market changes, dynamics are continuously changing. There might be new entrants, competition, and so on. But local market fit also has to do with local dynamics, local culture, and so on, which kind of makes or breaks your product in a new market. No strategy is always a setup for failure, because you'll be very opportunistic. And unfortunately, that's how most internationalization efforts start from startups, that you get some interest from some other country and you immediately translate that into, oh, we need to be there, we need to go there. So I'd rather work today on a little bit more sophisticated way of making sure you pick the right markets. Internationalization is always costly. Why? Simple answer to that. Because you're entering a market that is bigger than your home market, and you're entering it with less knowledge and less network than you have in your home market. So the sum of these efforts will always be greater than your own home market, and you need to be able to fund for it. So that's something that we will need to discuss as well. And the last thing is, and it breaks my heart to see this, but it happens all the time, is that people use unqualified resources, and I need to narrow that down a little bit. If you would bring, and that happens quite a bit, your best sales talent of the company, either yourself or somebody in your team, to a new country, then remember that a sales talent has to do with three things. You know the product, you know the market, you know the network. So you're able to match the network to the product in a market which you understand. That's what makes a good salesperson or a good sales effort. If you can't do that, there must be something wrong. But if you go international, the network is already kind of missing. So somebody who is really thriving in one market might not be qualified to do another market. And then wonders why it doesn't work. Well, that's because you simply don't understand the market and you haven't got the network. So the only thing you bring to the table is the product. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And before we go into internationalization, I want to come back to what I said just a minute ago, and let's look at what happens in the different areas. So if you are B2B, internationalization is more straightforward because it's more related to the product and your target group. If you are B2C, internationalization is very much a marketing game. And you need to make sure you have enough clout to play the marketing game well. And if you are service-led, imagine you offer a service and you need local teams to help, like Uber, for example, then we're not looking at countries, but we're looking at metropolitan area or serviceable regions. So that's another way of looking at things. So I just want to make sure that you understand in the different business models, there's different complications and there are different kind of things that you need to look at. The most important thing I would like to do today is to help you pick the right market. So what markets would be good for you? And the Banex guys, that's a great example. So you see already that there is some thought in picking the market. Let's dive a little bit deeper into this. And I want to use two marketing concepts which are also applicable for internationalization when we do this. And the first thing I want to do is I would like to look at a beachhead. And a beachhead means that it's your first must-win stake in an international market. So imagine you go from Sweden and you say, I want to expand within the Nordics. You pick one of the other Nordic countries. But when you do that, you kind of want to make sure that this is really working. And I want to run a quick video to illustrate this on if it's really important, you have to make sure that it actually works.
Now, on June 6th, 1944, Eisenhower was ready. And the first waves of nearly 2 million Allied troops sailed for Normandy, a giant armada of 4,000 ships. The skies were alive with Allied planes, pounding road and rail networks. German reinforcements for Normandy would be slow in arriving and tired and disorganized after their continual hammering from the air. German defenses on the beaches were softened up by massive bombardment. They expected an attack across the Straits of Dover, and the landing at Normandy came as a complete tactical surprise. This was the crucial attack on the power of Nazi Germany. This was D-Day. It was the greatest amphibious invasion of all time, and even Stalin was forced to admit the history of warfare knows no other like undertaking from the point of view of its scale, its vast conception, and its masterly execution. By the end of D-Day, more than 250,000 Allied troops were firmly established on French soil.
Okay, so this kind of illustrates the best what you mean with a beachhead. If this wouldn't have worked out, we probably would be speaking German in most of Europe, if we even would exist still today. So the idea is really, imagine having to do an operation where you get 250,000 people in one day to the other side. There was nothing left untouched to make sure this would absolutely work. And the same goes for you, because when you are still a startup and you're growing slowly into new markets, this is a must win. Because if it would fail, you would actually burn a lot of the resources that you would otherwise have used on your own market to do this. So that's why we really want to pick a beachhead, and I'll come back to that later on.
Now, on June 6th, 1940.
This always happens. I need to just quickly move on to the next slide and then share again. Another concept I want to use, and that is the concept of a bowling alley. So when you pick your first market, you would like it to be the entry for the next market. So like when you are in a bowling alley and you throw your pins, one market leads to another and leads to another and leads to another. So preferably you have let's say a game plan that kind of helps you grow from one market to another. And I'll explain that along to the Tesla cars, which are below. So when Tesla started, they made an absolutely useless car just to prove the point. Overly priced.
Mark, we can't see the presentation.
Oh, sorry. I'll reshare. Good that you mentioned this.
Perfect.
I'm in the middle of my storyline and then I don't have my visuals. That's the worst. Can you see it now?
Yeah, perfect.
Cool. Okay. So I was talking about these Teslas underneath, right? And we need to think about this as from territories the same way as it is for products. So this first step was a really small step, a very small limited amount of cars that were built for the very wealthy people that can afford pretty much a toy. So it was kind of a proof of concept and it was a toy. And the next car was already much more usable, but it was highly profitable. You needed that kind of money. But it kind of opened the door up to the next car, which was kind of increasing the profit. And then the Model 3 was where they really started to build a worldwide brand. So you need to kind of think of it the same way. So if you go from one country, imagine you would be a US company. What US companies typically do, thinking about the bowling alley, is they first go to the UK. Why? Localization is simple. Mindset is similar, most similar in Europe to the US. The let's say entry barriers in the UK are lower than they are in the rest of Europe, so it's pretty much very simple. They kind of consider it the 51st state. From the UK, they go to Ireland, obviously, because yeah, that's around the corner, and why not just grab it as well? Then typically they open an office in London and they hire a few guys, typical living in London, a French guy and a German guy, who they then ask to open up and explore the European market, the German market and the French market. Later on, they open an office in Frankfurt. Nobody opens an office in Frankfurt except for American companies, because Frankfurt is absolutely boring and far away from everything, but it's got a good airport. And from Frankfurt, they built their German office, which then goes into the DACH region, and from the DACH region to Eastern Germany or Eastern Europe. And then in France, they open an office which then covers Southern Europe. So then they go from the French office into Spain and Portugal and to Italy. And then there is a hotspot of countries, which is called Benelux and Nordics, which is a similar market, a pretty big market. We need to do something. And they either open up an office here in Amsterdam or in Stockholm. That's how they normally play their game. The other way around, if you're a European startup, then if you are a local market, then your addressable market is limited to the local addressable market. If you got proof of internationalization across the countries, imagine you would go to Norway and to Finland, you would call yourself a pan-Nordic player, so a Nordic player. If you then have, let's say, a handful of countries in Europe, you can call yourself a European player. but only if you have 3 or 4 large companies, so large countries, so say the UK, Germany, and France, you can call yourself a pan-European player. So this is the kind of thinking which is the same bowling alley thinking that we just talked about. And investors will be looking at this kind of proof points. So how far are you when it comes to playing? Not with your seed or pre-seed funding, but with your Series A. They want to see how you can justify an addressable market larger than the market you're already operating in. Does it make sense? Okay. So what we'll be doing, and it's now 31, and I'll be using, it's crazy, but it's true, almost 15 minutes to explain this. And then I'll give you an opportunity to play around with it, and then we'll come back. So this is going to be quite some explaining from my side. Is we want to look at which markets to pick. And we look actually at 2 things. We look at how attractive a market is. And most of the homework that I received is very much around that. So how attractive is this market for me? But we also, of course, have to look at how much we have a license to play there. So that's the other side of the same competitive strength. And then, of course, what we use here is a matrix where if the numbers are good, so and it's attractive and we think we can play well, then those are the countries we want to go first. So these are the most interesting countries. If it's unattractive and we can't play there, then of course we want to leave it out. So to sum this up, because this is a concept that is important, market attractiveness is of course how many fish are in the sea, right? And our competitive strength is what kind of equipment do we bring to the lake or to the sea to be able to get fish out. So those are the 2 things we need to look at. So we look outside in and we look inside out. And I used an example with permission, by the way, of a startup that I was involved in since 2015. And I will first tell the story and then I'll tell how what ended up with them. And this is a startup, it's called Birdie Time. And as you can see from the text, it's a Finnish startup. And the idea was that golf pros have a tough job. They need to organize themselves. They need to organize golf trips. They want to get better value out of the students that they are training, that are teaching. So you want to kind of help them sell themselves better. So and organize them from the other side. And I guess Niklas, this comes pretty close to your proposition, but then for golf pros. So kind of get that idea. That's kind of where we want to go from. And Mikko Bak, the CEO of that company, which I know well, came to me and said, Mark, you know what? It's May, June time now in Finland, and we have covered the whole of Finland. I think I need to go to South Africa. And I said, why do you want to go to South Africa? And he said, well, you know what? It's now peak seasons because the golf courses are now open. A month ago, there was still snow on the golf course, but now they are open. So everybody who plays golf is now completely involved in playing golf. All the teachers are completely fully booked. So there's nothing to sell anymore in this country. So I now want to go to South Africa because there it's actually winter time. This is just crazy. It's winter time. So I think it's a good idea to go there. And I told him, you know what, it's actually a great idea, but if you want to go on holiday, you really don't have to call me. You can make that up yourself. And he said, why do you say that? And I said, well, you know what, the problem is that South Africa is a very diverse market. Look at where the rand stands compared to the euro. It's a tenth of what the euro is like, and it was then, it's now even worse. And the people that I know from South Africa that play golf, they learn it from their parents pretty much. So there's not a lot of golf lessons to be done. And the ones that are actually training, they are training for tourists that come over for clinics. So that's the reason why I feel that this is not a good idea. And then we said, let's have a look on which market you could actually go to. And we made the exercise that you will be seeing in a minute. I can't see you guys anymore unless, Stefan, you let me re-enter the call, because somebody tried to call me and now I lost my connection. So if you have a comment, shout, right? So we're going through an exercise, and he went through this exercise, and I have given you his data. And I can simply do that because the company no longer exists. It merged with another company in the UK, so it's no longer around. What we did is we kind of semi-scientifically looked at which markets would be interesting. So that's why I asked you also to look at 5 markets that you want to go to, 5 countries. And the first thing we do is we look at what makes a market attractive. So we are on the market attractiveness tab later on in the spreadsheet that you got yourself as well. And we made a definition of what we thought would be attractive. And one thing that is always important is the market size. So that's obligatory. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a good factor in. And I'll explain why later. Then he thought, okay, market size, I have 2. I have a number of courses and I have a number of pros. But he was in the end selling to pros. So that was the key market size. And then he also wanted to see the courses, but that's really up to you. So you make your own decisions on what the criteria look like. Then he thought, you know, if I have an app and these are 80-year-olds that write everything in their notebook and there's no way of communicating through the app, then I can't sell. So the level of digitalization was really important. Then, of course, it was important if this golf pro was actually an entrepreneur, meaning he was running his own risk and he was earning his own money, just happens to be connected to the golf course, or if he would be an employee of the golf course. And for those of you who actually play golf, the difference is easy to spot, because the golf pro that is an own entrepreneur will always be found on the driving range, trying to book as many lessons as possible. And the employee golf pro is always found in the clubhouse with a cappuccino, talking to the people that are around. So that's a kind of difference. And then the next thing he was really important for golf pros, something you don't know necessarily, but just for me to explain, they earn their money on the daily basis selling lessons, but the real cherry on the cake is bringing your, you know, regular customers to Turkey, to Portugal in the winter, anywhere, and have a trip where, of course, you take a lot of margin. So additional sales is really important, and preferably, actually, another thing that you see quite a lot of golf pros do is selling clubs and golf equipment to their regulars and helping them find the right stuff. Now, so these are the criteria. And then the next thing we did was we put a weight factor in. And the weight factor is very simple. It needs to be 1 altogether. So if you put everything on 0.2, adding up to 1, then obviously you feel, this is a little bit off. So you then change it a little bit. So this was more important than this one, and you kind of change it. Don't make it scientific with 3 numbers behind the comma. Just try and make it okay. And then what we did was we made a rating chart. And by the way, here are in the lower corner you see some concept that affect market effects, so you can play with it. And the rating chart is kind of helping us to score. And it's relatively simple. You can make it binary. Yes, it's there or it's not there, and then it's 100 or 0. But we want to make a little bit more sophistication. So we say, okay, so if the market size is huge, we give it a lot of points. If there is no market at all, we give it 0 points. If it's in the middle, kind of, we give it 50. And if it skews to the huge side, it's 75. And if it skews to the small side, it's 25. So you kind of make it easy to give points. And this, again, is not scientific. For those of you who have studied beta studies, I fully apologize. I understand this is unworkable for you. You have to put your mind shift on an alpha student and try and play with it. Economics is always an appreciation game. You can, of course, and I'll come back to it later, also have the other way around. Imagine this would be the level of digitalization would be really low, and that would be great for us because we feel that, you know, then we have a lot to win. Then the score would be, if it's low, it's 100%. And if it's higher, we have nothing to do because they are already digitalized. So you can play with it both ways. Now comes the magic. So we put the countries in this double green box. By the way, you can only play with the green stuff. We put a number in for the market size, and that is relative to each other. And my key tip here, and I'll remind you later on, is try to put it in the 1,000 to 10,000 range, not in the million and so on. So if you were to go for market size and you have no idea, and you say, you know what, I'm going for Germany and I have no idea for market size, but they have 80 million people and I put 80 million here, you're blowing up the chart, and I'll show that later. And then, so the market size you fill in for only on this side, and then you start rating. So you have the rate factors taken, the rate factors coming from here, and here you score your rating. And what you see that happens here in this example is that he rated a number of things the way it is, and he rated a couple of things red and 50. And what that means is he doesn't know. So he kind of marks it, hey, this is still homework to be tested, I don't know. And I give all the numbers 50, so I neutralize this element in my score. Does it make sense? Any questions so far? No? Then, of course, this was the market attractive side, but we also need to look at the next step. So you have this sheet now, eh? So you can have a look later. We start on the MA and then we go to competitive, to the CS, right? And we do exactly the same thing, but then the other way around. So what do we bring to the table that makes us likely to be successful over competitors in this market? And that, I think in the sheet, it also has somewhere these examples, but you do exactly the same thing, but then the other way around. And probably when you do this later on, you'll find that this is bloody difficult, because it's really difficult to figure out what we would bring to the table. But here are a couple of examples. So for example, imagine you have a great partner that also has great strength in this new market you want to go to. Then of course you can leverage that. If you have a client that is, you know, very resonating also in that market, of course you can leverage that. If there is an entry barrier, then that's a problem. If the competitors are already really strong, if there's a local competitor that's already really active, that of course is a barrier, and so on. So you do the same thing on the other side. And then what you end up with is something like this. And I'll walk you through it. So this is the market attractiveness, and this is the competitive strength. And this, the bubble charts, the size of the bubble obviously shows the size of the market relative to the other markets. So here are the numbers again, but I can walk you through it this way. And what you can see is that when it comes to market attractiveness, they clearly thought that the US is the most interesting market. Then the UK and Ireland would be a great market. Then Canada was much smaller than they expected it would be. Sweden is obviously smaller than those countries, only from the population perspective already. And South Africa was really small, which I didn't expect. But trade secret here, even though there's lots of golf courses, there aren't that many people in South Africa actually playing golf themselves, so natives. So from an attractiveness perspective, they said, hey, you know what? This is the most attractive market. This is also quite attractive market. And actually, we think we can play there really well in Sweden. And this is kind of similar when it comes to competitive strength. And South Africa is a little bit more difficult because we simply don't know enough and it's quite far out and difficult. So now, this gives you an insight, or this gives you a bit of a pointer, but it doesn't necessarily tell you what to do next. And what they decided, and this is their thinking, is they wanted to go to the UK and Ireland first. And the reason they wanted to go there is because they felt that the US was too big a market to chew. They couldn't really go there. And they felt that Canada and South Africa was a little bit too far out. So this would be a good sweet spot country to go to first. And they are Finnish, and they felt that if they would be coming in as a Finnish company to Sweden, that would be an uphill battle. But if they would have presence and a good position in the UK and Ireland, then it would be much easier to convince the Swedes to also join in this proposition. So their head country was the UK and Ireland, and actually they succeeded quite well there. They had a good connection with the UK PGA, and they worked from there. It was really good. And then from there, they thought Sweden would be next, then Canada, then the US, and then we have to think of an alternative for South Africa and maybe another one as well. So this is how they built their go-to-market strategy. It ended up with them selling their company to a UK player. So that's how it ended up. And I would like you to, and I said it was going to take me 15 minutes to explain, and I'm pretty much on the money. I would like you to play with this yourself. So I'll close this sheet for now. And I'll stop sharing. So have a look and try first for the first 10 minutes. And I understand we have to be realistic. This is an exercise that we can do a full day workshop on. So I don't want to do that full day workshop. I just want you to touch the ground a little bit, have a bit of an idea on it. You can overwrite the sheet that you have. So you can just overwrite it. Any of the green stuff you can change. Any of the green stuff, all the stuff in the sheet is now from the example. So you have to fill in your own stuff, right? But play with it for 10 minutes, just on the MA tab. So the market attractiveness tab, just the only tab we want to touch. And then after that, we will, come back and see how it goes. And of course, I'll be around answering questions. Then we will have a quick look, 5 minutes on the competitive strength tab. So we'll do another 5 minutes on that. And then we will just come back and see what your thoughts are. And then we move on to other parts. But try and understand. If I can't ask you more than to understand the sheet and internalize it. That's all I'm asking for you right now. So don't try to be complete. That would be impossible. Just try to understand, hey, does this mean if I were to work from my own company's perspective and project my data on this sheet? Any questions around that? No? I see Niklas being happy. I see Tutsche thinking far and wide ahead.
I have one question. Is it the score field that we are gonna play, or?
No, everything green. So the criteria that are in the sheet need to become your criteria. So you start there. So go through the process that I've just said. So I'll put that slide back up, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 slide. So you work from 1, and then you finish it, then you go to 2, then you go to 3. So first thing you need to ask yourself, what would make a market attractive for you? What criteria need to be in place to have a market that is attractive for you? So great question. Thanks for that. Any other questions? No? From experience, you're not the first group that does this. We know this is going to be bloody messy. So I'll be around. I'll put up the sheet so that you know which order you need to work on. And I'll be around to help you guys with this. Okay? So here's the sheet again. So for the next 10 minutes, we're just working on this sheet and in this order. So first think about the criteria and then think about the numbers, but you can keep that for 0.2 for each of them. And then think about the rating chart. So how would you do that? That's all I would like you to do first. And then we'll look at the filling in exercise. Yeah, 10 minutes. I know it's quite a long time. I'll be around. I have my microphone open. I can't see you guys, but if you just shout, I will be here to answer your question.
Mark, for the rating chart, for example, we have a huge market size, huge market size for courses, but low level of digitalization and like medium entrepreneurial risk, etc. How would that fit on the rating chart?
Well, the rating chart is just your sheet on how you would later score when you are doing the actually scoring. So
Okay.
here you define what you would honor a lot of points and what you would honor not so many points. And it could also be negative. It could be the other way around. So if something is really well organized in that country, there's not a lot we can do there, then of course that's 0 points. And if there's nothing done yet, then we can do a lot and it's a lot of points.
All right, thank you.
Welcome. Yeah. So you won't see me all the time because I'm walking around, but I can hear you guys and you just shout. I can't see you, just for you to know. Yeah. So don't raise your hand because I wouldn't be able to see you. Yeah. All doing okay?
Yeah, I think so.
Good stuff. All right, let's do 3 more minutes, and then we'll come back and discuss how it went. 1 more minute. All right. So, first comments, first initial thoughts.
It was kind of challenging to decide on the weight of different factors.
Yeah. And it's logical, eh? So I'm not surprised at all. Let me try to explain somewhat why it's difficult. So I'll go and show the sheet quickly, right? So before I do that, anyone else thought it was challenging? Felicia? Tutsche? Was it easy, challenging?
I've been thinking I don't have my team here today, so I've just been thinking about it on my own.
Yeah.
So it is challenging, but I did like your examples.
Yeah.
It puts some perspective on how to think, how to questions.
And the fun thing is, we can walk through it and then you understand why it's challenging and what you need to do to make it easier. Right. So I'll open up the sheet and I'll walk you through it. Just give me a sec. Yeah. Okay. So if you find it challenging to work on your criteria, you really have to go back to your key product. What am I offering and to who? And this is basically a reflection of your ideal customer profile, so to speak. Do you understand? Then if you find it challenging to put the way factor in, that's because we have to have more data points from our customers. So you can find this in your customer data if you already have quite a lot of customers. Or you can have a look and see, okay, what can I find from interviews, how this relates, basically. So what do my customers find more important? And therefore, what do I find more important when I try to get new customers similar to what I already have? This one is only an exercise where we kind of define what is important and what is scoring high and what is scoring low. So this is only a ranking. This should be not too difficult. It's pretty obvious that this needs to be huge and then it's great, and the other way around. So this is typically not the biggest issue. It starts here. Oh, sorry. It starts here when we do the market size, because we might not have that data. And then you can always go by all things being equal, my market size is a reflection of population, or if you were to sell to hospital, it's a reflection of the number of hospitals that I can sell to, or if you are to sell to, let's say, companies of a certain size, you can find that kind of information. But this is typically a matter of desk research. You'll find this. Now it gets to the tricky part. Here, and this is also the great thing about this document. Here you will start to realize that you simply don't have the data. And that's because we haven't really given enough thought about this market. We haven't really looked into this market. So if you want to look into a market and do desk research, this is actually where you want to look for. If I don't have an answer on this question, I need to go and find it. And that goes for all these criteria that we thought were so important. And you might end up with more criteria than you think, and you have to kind of prioritize on the top 5, which happens once in a while. Or you might think, oh, wait a second, I find this really important, but I see one particular blocker or one particular challenge entering this particular market. And then I congratulate you because you start to understand the market you're targeting. So that's the kind of thinking that we want to get to. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it is as much an exercise in understanding the market as it is an exercise in prioritization, because that has, of course, goes hand in hand. Another 5 minutes on the even more difficult side. So we go to the next part, and that is the customer strength or the competitive strength side, just to have a feel with it. And I would have loved, of course, if we would have done a full workshop, we definitely would have ended up with the bubble chart and then have a conversation about what you learn from here and what choices are you making. We don't have the time for this now. If you want to do that in the one-on-one course, that's very possible. But for now, I just want you to spend 5 minutes on understanding what the difference is between market attractiveness and competitive strength and what the implication is for you when you're doing your research or you're looking into this stuff. So again, I'll share. Back to the deck. We're now on this page. Try and give it a. And I'm not sure who it is, but somebody has his mic open. Okay, 5 minutes, and then we'll move on. So, how was this? More difficult, right?
Yeah.
Much more difficult. And that's because we are used to looking from how shiny the market is. But this is soul searching and can we actually play? So that's why it's so important to do this well. Yeah. Okay. We need to move on because otherwise I'm running out of time and there's so much still to discuss. So I'm going to share again. Actually, I think I'm still sharing, right? Yeah, so I'll move back to my slide deck. We discussed this. I want to walk you through the most common engagement models when you go abroad. And we'll do this in a lightweight way. So let's do this quickly. Here's one. It's called I call it the frequent flyer. And it's kind of the model where you are just, as a founder, going back and forth into a new market and so on. And the problem that you'll have with this is that it's pretty time consuming and you make very little impact because you're not all the time around. Remember from what we said earlier, if you're not there, they kind of forget about you. So you have very little impact if you do that. Of course, the benefit is that you know the story best, but very little impact. Now, of course, you can solve that by going the expat way, so moving there and then trying to build it. We call that the happy camper. And the problem that you'll have there is that you'll have no network. So the first 3 months, you'll just be sorting out where to live and how to do things and so on, where to put the kids to school if you have kids. I had one guy who went to Amsterdam and brought his shiny Audi only to find it, vandalized pretty much by the next 2 months and then had to ship it back because it was a very bad idea in the area where he lived. That's the kind of stuff you do the first 3 months, then you start building a network. So you're half a year at least further before you actually start making some impact. So that's the problem with the happy camper. Then, of course, as a startup, you want to do it all, but you have very little funding. So I call that the backpacker. So you try to spread yourself thin by being everywhere all the time. And if you're a backpacker and you're traveling across Europe, that's probably a pretty okay idea. But as a startup, we're not on holiday. We want to get results. So you're spreading yourself too thin to really get results. And the last thing is the partner manager. And this is best illustrated by 2 people having a cup of coffee. So there's lots of coffee being drunk. But is there actually business being done? If we don't talk about business, everybody is your friend. So you're kind of outsourcing the most important thing that you need to do, and that is to understand the market. So that's why you always want to make sure if you would go through partners or through channel, it's not the end of the solution, it's actually complicating matters because you need to first be able to sell it before the partner will engage. That's the most important message here. I want to skip over and talk a little bit about culture. And because that's the most fun thing, of course, about internationalization, that you have to deal with different kind of people from different areas and so on. And culture is mythical, but actually it's well studied. So I want to point you out to an app. And the app is from Hofstede Insights. If you look it up in the App Store or in the Google Play Store, look for this name, and it's an app, it's free, and it's from a company. Hofstede was the founder of studies when it comes to cultural differences, and you can compare countries across the 6 criteria to define a culture. And here are the 6 criteria, and what I've done here is I've taken Finland, France, Netherlands, and the United States as an example, and the 6 criteria are here, so I'll walk you through them, right? So power distance is how hierarchical or vertical is the organization. And you see that France is much more hierarchical than the other countries. And maybe surprising to some, the US is kind of hierarchical, and you see, but it's much, much lower, right? Individualism is what it says, speaks for itself. So how individually oriented? Is it everybody for everybody, or is it everyone for themselves? And no surprises here, I guess, that US is much more individual than Finland would be, and if you would put Japan, it would be somewhere here, basically. But you get the idea, this individuality. Masculinity is about how tough a society is, or how much you need to stand your ground, so to speak. And here again, US is very masculine. France is quite masculine, and then and you know the examples with the little Napoleons from there. Finland is more masculine than the Netherlands are, so we are a little bit more equalized when it comes to that stuff. Uncertainty avoidance is how much do you want to play it safe? And also here, no surprises, the French are very much on uncertainty avoidance. They want to really play it safe. So if there is, you can actually read it in the newspaper, if there are large reorganizations in companies going on, there's been lots of scandals on it, then the French are really insecure, and in fact there's a lot of suicide actually going on this level. Here again, Finland is also playing it quite safe, and the US is not bothered. We live tomorrow and see what things look like tomorrow. That's a whole different story. Long-term orientation versus short-term orientation. Obviously, the US is very short-term. If you don't make this quarter, there'll be no next quarter, is what they say in US sales. But at the same time, Netherlands is much more long-term than, for example, Finland. And that's funny, because that means that the horizon of growth is here much longer than it is over here. And indulgence could simply be explained on how much you want to enjoy the good things in life, and let's say take quality of life at a higher level by buying great stuff or by taking these. So it explains differently. So US and Netherlands are on the same level, but it explains completely different. So indulgence in the US means I want to have a big house and a big car and a big this and a big that. And the Dutch people say, you know what, if I earn enough, I'll take the rest of the week off, because, you know, I've got enough and I'm happy with where I am. So I cherish my free time much more than extra stuff or extra whatever. Does it make sense? I guess it does. Let me illustrate a little bit with an example. So here is a Dutch guy, right? And the Dutch would be typically very blunt, typically very extrovert, trader, pretty relaxed, but also confrontational, looking for solutions, bending the rules. That's typical how a Dutch person is. Try cycling through Amsterdam and you'll notice what I mean. Here's a Finn. Introvert, diplomatic, very risk averse, very deliberate, and very strict to rules. Now imagine these people would do business together. What would it mean? Now, if the Dutch guy comes in, he will tell a great story, but you have to ask if there's really a product behind it. So it's very much never mind the product, buy the dream. And the Finn, on the other hand, will have a great product, but would not like to sell it. So they would say the product is so good it will sell itself. So that's a complete different way of working, you see. So you can imagine what kind of cultural issues might arise if you do this. Now let's talk about local market fit. What does local market fit mean? I've been using this term before. So I want to kind of show what that means. This is Louis van Gaal, which is a soccer trainer from the Netherlands. This is also Louis van Gaal. And this is also Louis van Gaal. So it is the same guy, and he is notoriously pretty much himself all the time. and he's trying to fit into new situations and new cultures. And the joke in the Netherlands is that he always fails. He was a trainer in Manchester United, he failed. He was in Bayern Munich, he failed. But he is very cherished in the Netherlands. So what we need to do is, we can't play around too much with the product, but we have to make sure we place it in the right context. So that actually means that we need to think about the culture. We need to think about the product fit. Does it fit from a regulatory perspective? Is it relevant? Is the topic, the business drivers the same? We need to think about competition. What does it mean from a competition perspective? And we need to think about market dynamics. So, and that also has to do with, how is this market changing moving forward? Any questions around that? No? Okay. Then of course, this leads to the next thing. And the next thing is, how do we check this? And
I have a question, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Should the product itself be adapted or the marketing language?
No, you try to localize the product, but localization doesn't mean just we have it translated in English. If you go to the US market, it also means your marketing message needs to address what's going on there. The dynamics in your product and how it's being used need to fit how people use the stuff over there. So there's a lot more to it than just the product. The product, typically you want to keep one size fits all product as much as you can, but you have to make adjustment in the engagement because of competition or culture or market dynamics, because you can't make a product for every single country. But the way it's being used and the things you need to highlight from one step to another is something that you really have to think about. Is that enough for now?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So how do you do this? And the way to do this is to validate. And if you want to think about validate, think about Borat, how he went to the US and he sees everything is different than where he comes from. That's kind of how you want to do it yourself as well. So here's a stepped approach to validation. And basically it starts from where we are today. So we have a product and we want to understand what is our goal, what do we want to achieve in this market, but mostly what I want to understand is what makes my product successful in my home market. What are the 3 or 4 key success factors that made me grow my business in my home market? And that implies that I have a reference point. So I want to have a reference point, because if I know what makes my company successful in my home market, my product successful in my home market, if I then project this to another market in a market quick scan, and I'll explain how that works, all I need to do is what is the same and what is different. So does the market look as we thought it would? From the key project, can I play the same cards? Can I get the same results if I play the same cards in this new market? And a quick scan is not a sales exercise. It's a fact-finding or learning exercise. And it doesn't have to be with the top guys in a company. I need people that are very knowledgeable about the market, from my perspective, to help me get the most detailed answers to this question. So what happens is, you are looking for the why behind the why. So if somebody says, hey, I got a great product, or you have a coffee with someone who might have been, in the field, might be a PT in another country, or might be some consultant that works in a certain area in another country, and you sit down with him and I would say, hey, you would like to pick your brain, and you say, this is what I'm trying to do here, then that person will say, oh, this is great, or this would never work. And if it's great, then you want to know why it's great. And if it never works, then you want to understand why it would never work. But actually, you want to know even the why behind the why. It doesn't work because we are different here. Okay, so what is different? Well, this is why it wouldn't work, because here we are different. Now we're getting somewhere. You see? So that's what you want to do in the quick scan. And typically, if you have 5 conversations, the first one you learn 3 or 4 things. The second one, 2 or 3 things get repeated, so they say the same answer, give you the same answer, and after 5 meetings you have a couple of red threads, you have a couple of key points that you keep hearing over and over again. And you want to do this before you actually start selling in a roadshow. So imagine you would go over for a week and you try to talk to as many customers as possible. Then if you haven't really dealt with the things you heard here, then you will run into the same, stumble on the same blocks over and over here. So you already do a little bit of objection handling or localization in your conversation when you are here. And when you do this, you kind of see what the traction looks like. So a couple of people will say, yes, I like this, I want to move forward with this. And a couple of people will say, it's not so interesting. And after 10 conversations, if 3 say I like it and 7 say it's not so interesting, you make up the balance, right? And that kind of projects how successful you can be in the market. And then you can work on how to actually enter the market. That's kind of the model that we typically suggest. And I want to just stress this part again. So this is validation. This is market research. Market research is about numbers. And you ask a student or anyone else to do this for you. It's a matter of Googling and finding numbers and working out the details. This is looking somebody in the eye, understanding where it fits and where it doesn't fit. This gives answers to the culture question. This doesn't give any answers on the culture question. Does it make sense? We are right on the time, so this is excellent. And I want to talk the last part of the day. I think we need another 15 minutes or so on how do you actually make a business case for internationalization? Because remember, I've been stressing to you guys that you need to do much more on go-to-market in your model. So when you are talking to an investor and you say, I want to enter the US, then expect the question from the investor, how are you going to do this? And what's the numbers behind it? So you need to tell a feasible story on how to get there. And there are actually 2 overriding schools when it comes to internationalization. And funnily enough, the old traditional school is the Uppsala school, where you basically take one country and make a profit and use the profit or the funding from one country to open up the next. And then from there on, you build the next. And this was, it's called the Uppsala school because actually the first papers on this came from Uppsala University back in the 70s. And the world was much slower in the 70s than it is today. So if you would be a mid-sized, let's say, fine metal machinery company with all the time in the world to slowly explore the market and grow slowly, excellent way of working. Actually, there's still companies that could easily work with this stuff if you're in a very big niche. But the world moves faster. So a couple of years back, maybe 10, 15 years back, the effectuation theory came up from India. And this is where we do it differently. We call it the affordable loss. So like being in a casino, when you enter the casino, if you do it well, and you don't want to end into trouble, you kind of set the boundary for yourself. You say, I'm going to go into the casino, but I will maximum play X amount of money, or I buy X amount of features, and that's it. Then we leave it. So I'm creating a budget for myself in order to do so. And that budget is kind of the foothold onto making sure, okay, I'm going through a business opportunity exercise, and I want to make sure I get this result from this business opportunity. Now, how does this look in practice? What we advise, if I have companies that want to come to Netherlands or want to come to Europe, we typically want to talk about an ROI window of 12 to 18 months. And now everybody who has been in accounting should close their ears, because what I'm telling you is absolutely not scientific and has nothing to do with accounting. It's a ballpark situation. And what we try to say is, or what we typically say in B2B, for B2C this is different. So don't use this for B2C. But for B2B, we typically say you should within 12 or 18 months have an outlook that you incremental cost, so the cost of opening a new market, is covered by the incremental revenue. So we want to break even on the cost versus revenue, which doesn't mean we're making profit. We might still be loss making. It doesn't mean that we can put this like that into the books. We might have transfer pricing going on. It just means that if we get to that point, we are tipping the scale and moving the curve in the right direction. So we want to see if we can get the curve in that direction, because from there on unit economics apply and we start to grow. So this is what we try to achieve within 12 to 18 months. Why only 12 to 18 months? Because typically the outlook for your funding is no longer than that. So you need to fix this within this time. I understand this is confusing. So what I did is I brought an example. And here's an example which is derived from an actual business case. So here's a company that wanted to enter a market. In this case, they wanted to enter the Netherlands. And they made an internal business case. And the business case goes kind of as follows. So they have a cost side where they said, we need a membership from a certain association in the Netherlands, and we need to utilize that membership. So the reason they wanted to come is because the membership of the association was based in the Netherlands, and therefore the largest customer base was in the Netherlands, and this was their way of getting it. This is the leading association. And they said we need to utilize it, so we need to kind of advertise or be on fairs, and we need to, so this is the budget that they had for that. Then they wanted to do business development, and they said we need a local sales agent, and that would be a part-time person, but this is the budget they had. And then of course that person would be traveling, so we have cost for the traveling, and we would have cost from the team itself to come to the Netherlands to help and be present. So the total cost would be 80,000 euros. This is, by the way, fixtures numbers, just to illustrate the point. But they also on the profit side or the income side, they said if we would score a client, it would lend us, this is a B2B software solution, it would lend us 19,000 euros in that year. And that's because we ask 15,000 euros just to set up the business, to install and implement the software, and then there would be an annual fee which totals 4,000 on the monthly fees that we charge for our software. And by the way, given our numbers in our home country, we know that on a 3-year term, this would be the number, and say 27,000 euros. So what does this mean? It actually means if we would, 4 is not enough, we need 5. If we would have 5 clients, we would kind of cover the cost and have access to business. So the key term here is access to business. So we need 5 clients, and there are 200 clients in scope. So 5 out of 200 would need to choose our solution, and then we would be in business. And then on top of that, we have other monetary benefits, which I'll talk about later. But this is a simple board decision. Do we want to risk it? Yes. For a year, how much is going to cost? Maximum exposure is 80K. How much are we going to earn back? Well, if we have 5 clients, we earn back more than what we invested. If we have 4, we are just making a bit of a loss. If we have 3, then it's not a success, but okay, it's not really breaking the bank. And if we have nothing, we'll stop after half a year. Can we make that call, dear, from the board to the team? Yes, we can make that call. Okay. And why is it interesting anyway? Because yes, we have a certain program. This is a Finnish company. That we can have access to if we do this, because internationalization is key of that program, so we can get this funding. And we also have another, let's say, valuation, because we can then prove that we are actually playing on a European scale. So we need to get here anyway. This is part of our assignment moving forward. Any questions around this? I'm just stopping here. I want to make sure that I see your faces. Do you understand that building a business case like this is crucial to making sure your business model fits? And it might not be directly in your pitch deck, but this is the first thing the investor will be asking about, right? They want to know how you are going to get a return on their money, and this is key of it, right? So this is the difference between just getting their money back or proving that this is a viable product that can scale like crazy. Yeah. So you want to get this done in the right way. And obviously, as a service, this budget can be found in the spreadsheet so you can play with it yourself, right? So that is all good. All right. Any questions on this stuff? No? I don't see anyone. No hands up. Excellent. Then I'm going to close off. And I thought the best way is to revisit this where we started. What do you think? So remember, we started with why things fail, right? So expansion for the wrong reasons, false product market fit assumptions. We talked a lot about that when it comes to culture and so on. Internationalization, no strategy. Well, we talked about that too. Underestimating the cost we talked about and the resources. So what is the answer? You want to play for the long game. This is part of your long-term pitching plan. This is the part of how you want to grow your company strategically. And if you can confirm already today that this is part of your long game, you need to work on it already today. Market fit assumptions, I gave you a pointer on how to do this. So you have to research and validate. And there's a difference between research and validation, right? Internationalization strategy. You can no longer be opportunistic because you can't unlearn what you learned today. So you know you need to build on this in a strategic way. The cost of going international, make a local budget and a P&L. And we explained how you can do this. At least how you can create pointers along the way to make sure that you can see if you're on the right track. And unqualified resources, always try to get a local expert involved. Doesn't have to be on your payroll, but make sure you have that market insight before you actually expand and start pushing money in it. What's next? A few of you guys have already booked one-on-one. Those who haven't done that yet, there is still space tomorrow to talk about internationalization. Obviously, we go through the normal drill. So I'll send you the handout through Stefan and Dasha, and then you'll get that in the share. Next week, I still have availability for those teams that haven't done 3 calls yet and still would like to discuss. So that's what I said early on the beginning of the session. So I will stick with that, of course. And with that, I would like to thank you. And if I don't see you in the one-on-ones anymore, Amber's got a question.
Hey, I missed the first part. Is it possible to get this like uploaded fairly quickly, Mark? This recording?
Yeah. I'll set the handout later on, and Dasha is is doing the recording, so I guess she will be sending the recording.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Any other questions? No? Then thanks for those that I don't talk to anymore. It's been a fun ride. And for those that I do talk, see you somewhere this week or next week. And with that, I hand over to the team.
Thank you, Marc.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
All right.
Thank you, Mark.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.